Writing. The room went silent the moment the black belt pointed at the exhausted single father and said, "Come on." Nobody expected the quiet man in worn training clothes to accept the challenge. He had walked into the gym that bright Saturday morning carrying nothing but an old duffel bag, a water bottle, and the weight of years he rarely talked about. But when the arrogant champion stepped forward, something changed in the father's eyes. For the first time that morning, the tiredness disappeared. If you believe kindness can change people and that everyone deserves a second chance, take a moment to like, comment, share this story, and subscribe to Heartline Stories. Because what happened inside that gym would remind everyone watching that strength isn't always about being the loudest person in the room. The man standing in the center of the mat was named Darius Holloway, a 41-year-old Navy veteran who had spent most of his adult life learning how to stay calm when everything around him was falling apart. Since leaving the service, Darius had become a single father to his 12-year-old son, Kellen. Their life wasn't glamorous. They lived in a small second-floor apartment where the kitchen window rattled whenever a truck passed outside, and Darius worked long shifts repairing commercial air conditioning systems. Some days he came home after sunset with aching shoulders and grease beneath his fingernails, only to find Kellen waiting at the kitchen table with homework spread around him. Darius never complained. He simply heated dinner, checked the math problems, and listened when his son talked about school. He had promised Kellen years ago that no matter how difficult life became, his son would never have to wonder whether his father would show up. That Saturday, Darius had brought Kellen to Iron Harbor Martial Arts because the boy had been begging to learn self-defense. Kellen was skinny, intelligent, and painfully shy. He had recently started wearing glasses after his eyesight worsened, and he often tried to hide behind oversized hoodies whenever other kids were around. Darius recognized that fear because he had once carried his own version of it. He wanted his son to learn confidence without becoming cruel, discipline without becoming cold, and strength without needing to prove it. The gym was crowded that morning. Sunlight poured through the high windows, reflecting off the polished floor and illuminating rows of students sitting along the walls. At the center stood Rafe Mercer, a famous local black belt known for winning tournaments and humiliating anyone who questioned him. Rafe was younger than Darius, broad-shouldered, confident, and surrounded by admirers. He had spent years building a reputation as the toughest fighter in the gym. Unfortunately, somewhere along the way, he had begun believing that reputation made him better than everyone else. During a demonstration, Rafe noticed Darius watching from the edge of the mat. Perhaps it was Darius's calm expression that irritated him. Perhaps it was the fact that Darius didn't look impressed. Whatever the reason, Rafe walked over with a grin that made several students exchange uncomfortable glances. He asked whether Darius wanted to step onto the mat. Darius politely declined, explaining that he was there for his son. But Rafe wasn't interested in politeness. He mocked Darius's old sneakers, his faded training shirt, and the fact that he looked more like a tired mechanic than a fighter. Then Rafe pointed toward the mat and challenged him again. Darius looked at Kellen. The boy's eyes were wide with concern. His father gave him a small nod, the same reassuring nod he had given him countless times before. Then Darius stepped forward. The laughter stopped. Rafe expected an easy victory. He had watched Darius move only briefly and assumed the older man was untrained. What Rafe didn't know was that Darius had spent years learning that the first rule of surviving conflict was never to underestimate silence. Darius didn't brag about his military service. He didn't wear medals around his neck. He didn't tell strangers stories about the places he had been or the things he had seen. To him, those memories belonged to another life. The first exchange was fast. Rafe attacked aggressively, expecting Darius to panic. Instead, Darius calmly moved aside, redirected the motion, and stepped back. The entire gym seemed to inhale at once. Rafe attacked again, faster this time. Darius avoided the strike without throwing one of his own. Again and again, Rafe pushed forward while Darius refused to match his anger. Then Rafe lost his balance. He didn't fall hard, but the humiliation was obvious. A few students looked away. Someone in the back whispered that Darius must have trained before. Rafe's face reddened. He charged again, determined to prove the mistake had been luck. Darius stopped him with a controlled movement and brought him safely to the mat. The gym went completely silent. Darius released him immediately and stepped back. There was no celebration on his face. No smile. No gesture toward the crowd. He simply offered Rafe a hand. For several seconds, Rafe stared at it. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of taking the hand, Rafe looked toward Kellen. The boy was sitting on the floor near the edge of the mat, holding his injured shoulder. During the commotion, another student had accidentally bumped into him, and he had fallen awkwardly. Darius immediately forgot about the challenge. He rushed to his son, kneeling beside him and asking if he was all right. Kellen tried to be brave, but his eyes filled with tears. That moment changed Rafe. He suddenly understood what everyone else had missed. Darius hadn't stepped onto the mat because he wanted to prove he was stronger. He had done it because his son was watching. And when his son needed him, the challenge, the crowd, and the entire competition became meaningless. Rafe slowly walked over and crouched beside Kellen. For the first time that morning, the cocky black belt looked uncertain. He apologized for what had happened and admitted that he had been trying to impress everyone because he was afraid of losing the respect he had worked so hard to earn. Darius listened without judgment. Then he told Rafe that respect wasn't something a person demanded. It was something they earned by how they treated people who had nothing to offer them. Those words stayed with Rafe. Weeks later, something remarkable happened at Iron Harbor. Rafe began arriving early to help beginners. He stopped mocking inexperienced students. He started teaching instead of performing. And Darius became a regular visitor, not because he wanted recognition, but because Kellen had discovered that he loved martial arts. One afternoon, Rafe watched Kellen complete his first belt test. The boy looked nervous, but Darius stood beside the wall with his arms folded and that familiar proud smile on his face. Kellen passed. Rafe was the first person to applaud. Darius looked across the room at him, and the two men exchanged a quiet nod. Neither needed to mention the confrontation that had changed everything. Sometimes the most powerful victories aren't the ones where someone is defeated. Sometimes the real victory is when two people walk away from the same moment as better versions of themselves. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes real strength means protecting others, and subscribe to Heartline Stories. Your support helps stories like this reach people who may need a reminder that kindness is never weakness. And before the story ends, make one special commitment. Promise yourself that the next time you have the chance to make someone feel small, you'll choose to lift them up instead. Because Darius taught everyone in that silent gym something they would never forget. A strong man doesn't need to prove he can break someone. He proves his strength by knowing when not to. And sometimes, the person standing across from you isn't your enemy at all. Sometimes, they're simply someone waiting for one good person to show them a better way.